Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello and welcome to this episode of our show. This is your host, Keith Doherty. Today our special guest is top real estate agent Alex Gandel of Century 21 Troop Real Estate based out of Simi Valley, California. Alex, number one agent company-wide, 2011-2015 with Century 21 Troop Real Estate, is celebrating 36 years in the business. Of those 36 years, he has been with Century 21 Troop Real Estate for 21 years and has consistently earned the most prestigious awards for his top production and professional excellence. As a seasoned veteran, he has also represented clientele in a vast array of price ranges and transactions as he attributes his success to his glass half full approach in his business and personal life, which enables him to continue to help a multitude of people throughout all Ventura County and the San Fernando Valley, from first-time home buyers and sellers to estate-level buyers and sellers. In 2015, he closed 90 transactions totaling over $55 million in sales. He's also been a guest speaker in prestigious venues such as the 2015 OnQ Top Producers Panel in Ventura County and the 2014 Real Live Top Agent Panel at the Skirball Center. 5 words you can count on from him and his staff: integrity, passion, commitment, communication, and results. All right, with all that said, Alex, welcome to the show.
Hi, Keith. Thanks for having me today. Appreciate the opportunity to get to know you guys a little bit and answer your questions. Should be fun.
Absolutely. We appreciate you taking the time. And I guess, Alex, if we could start for our listeners, what led you into real estate? Was it something that you always knew you wanted to do, or did you maybe stumble into it?
Well, I was 20 years old, and I guess you could say that I stumbled into it in the sense that when I was growing up, my mom and dad worked hard but didn't really have a lot of luck with what they were doing, and when we moved at the time I was 17, the gentleman that represented them on the sale of their home here in Simi Valley suggested to my dad that he should try the real estate business. And that was back in 1976, and so he got in the business. I graduated from high school about 6 months later, went away to college, got my first invoices after being down at San Diego State for a year, realized I didn't want to take on that debt, came home, and in that time, my mom and dad's life had greatly improved, and so that was kind of like my first taste of it. And then about a year and a half later, I met my longtime friend Brian Troop, who is the CEO of Century 21 Troop Real Estate. He was already in the business, and I was studying marketing and finance and economics in college, and I realized if my dad could do it and Brian could do it, I could do it, and so that's how I got started.
And Alex, can you talk a little bit about what personal attributes, traits, or qualities you think have most contributed to the success that you've had in real estate?
You know, I would have to say that I'm a very personable individual in the sense that I really do care about what's happening with the clients, and having studied what I did in college helped me to develop a mindset and a thought process that became applicable to the non-emotional side of the business that we're in. And, you know, I've always been kind of a fix-it guy, and I really didn't realize until I was in the business about 5 years, I was in my mid-20s at that time, what it could really become, having been through those tough times in 1980 to 1984 and 85 when we had interest rates that were as high as 18.5%. So I started in a really tough time. I was very young. And I just developed my skill set from that, and I've always been driven as far as success goes, but for me the success is built one client at a time, and it's not about, you know, money's a funny thing. You'll make more of it if you actually care about the people, and than you will ever make if you just care about the money. So that's a big part of what makes me tick.
Yeah, I think it's a great point what you made there, and a lot of the other guests that we've had on the show kind of stress the same thing, that focus on providing value, focus on service, and serving others and taking care of their needs. And not many people mention, oh, I got into real estate because I could make a lot of money, even though it's a byproduct of it. But it seems like the most successful agents like yourself have said, well, let's focus on people, taking care of them, and the commissions are a byproduct of doing the right thing and taking care of people, that they kind of just come hand in hand with it.
I'm 200% there with you. And what's funny about that is that, after having done this for so long, I see new agents come in and they're just, one day I had a young agent, not young in his age, but young in the business, asked me one day, he said, why would you sell this is a number of years ago, by the way, but he said, why would you sell a $60,000 mobile home when you could sell a $650,000 house? Because he had gone back into the office and looked at the board, and that's how they chart things at this company that I work with. And I looked him in the eye and I said, Alan, let me tell you something. That $650,000 sale took me about 6 weeks to make, and I can't even tell you how many hours I put into it. And I said, to be honest with you, I don't think the people appreciated anything that I did. The $60,000 mobile home, I spent about 3 hours on it. I sent it to my assistant to run the transaction. It was a cash deal. The gal that asked me to handle that for her, I'd been handling their family's business for years. She had just lost her husband. She was counting on me to make sure she was in a nice, safe environment. She bought a beautiful home for herself where she actually ended up living for over 20 years. And that's my job, and the fact that she asked me to help her do that was all that I needed to help her. And if you really want to talk about an hourly wage, I probably made $1,000 an hour on the mobile home, and I probably made about $1.70 an hour on the other deal because of all the time invested. And he didn't understand that because, to be honest with you, he never made it in the business. But that's the way it is.
Excellent. And I think, Alex, when it comes to success, that not everything's always a smooth road or a path to get there. A lot of times there's adversities and trials along the way. So do you think you could talk a little bit about some of the adversities or trials that you had to overcome in order to achieve your goals?
Sure. Well, I mean, in reality, every day you're going to have challenges, and so you have to step back outside to look back in to realize how to handle them. Transactions have challenges. Personalities have challenges. That's the business that we're in. You have people and you have financial circumstances. And, of course, in the last 30-some-odd years, our business has changed drastically. So, aside from the normal business things and trying to be a pleaser, which is just in my nature, I had to learn how to facilitate these transactions unemotionally. And as I said, when I was in my mid-20s, about 5 years into my career, I began to understand that my role was one of objectivity, not being subjective, and that the only way that I could help my clients overcome their hurdles was to remain, objective throughout the process and continually remind them of what was happening. And then, of course, in this kind of a business, when you're driven, not every month is a stellar month, but thankfully over time you develop a business where you have a lot of consistency. Ironically, when you're getting started in the business or in it, in the first few years of that, you're going to go through the ebbs and flows and the ups and the downs. And, one of the biggest challenges that I had straight out was that, for example, my first goal ever was that I'm going to sell a house a month. I was 20 years old, almost 21. We were in historically high interest rates. I didn't beat myself up if I didn't do it, but by the same token, that was a goal that I was going to achieve. And then once I got to that one, it was going to be 2 homes a month and whatever. And then when I didn't achieve that, I was upset with myself for not achieving it. But then those are the types of emotional ups and downs that you create for yourself. So I had to learn how to not get caught up in that cycle and then, continue to grow the foundation of my business to ensure the consistency that it is I've enjoyed all these years.
Excellent. And I guess, when you hit these obstacles, when these things come up, what keeps you going? Why didn't you give up? What's your driving force?
I guess it's that I know that I can always do better. I know that if people take the time to research me now the way things are done, but as that's all grown and developed, or reached out to me to help them, if they had the confidence in me to help them, even if it was a tough thing, that I needed to have the confidence in myself to move forward. And I'm very rewarded when it's all said and done, knowing that they've had that trust and confidence in me and my staff to help them to achieve their goals, whether it's a good or a bad situation, whether it's a first-time home buyer or they're buying up because their family's grown or they got a better job, or whether it's a divorce and they're splitting up and they have to sell it, or, the last 8-9 years, all of these short sales and all the difficult financial situations. The fact that they've come to me which I developed that kind of mindset early on. I feel very blessed for that, and so I want to make sure that I continue to build that foundation so that people, when they have that confidence in me, I can guide them through this huge decision, and it's very fulfilling for me, actually.
Excellent. And I guess, Alex, when looking forward, what's your vision for your career, say, over the next 5 years?
Well, I'm 57 now, and as I said, I've been doing this for 36 years, but the fire still burns very hot in me. 3 years ago, my oldest son, when he graduated from UC Riverside in Southern California, he decided he wanted to follow in my footsteps, so that would be like the third generation. My dad only lasted in the business for about 14, 15 years due to illness, and so my son Brad is now 26, and he started at just 23, actually. And, I explained to him that if this is not for you, you shouldn't be doing this, because he asked me to do it. I didn't ask him. Well, that kind of changed my whole mindset about things, because here he has an opportunity by the time I decide to slow down to take over a business that by then will probably be 40-some-odd years old. But ironically, we are designed here to change as the world changes, to provide the highest level of service that we can for our clients. And with my staff here, which has grown over the years, I have 2 full-time assistants and a part-time assistant who is clerical to help the 2 full-time assistants. We meet regularly, sometimes 2-3 times a week to make sure that we're tweaking things. And my goal is to not work 7 days a week anymore at some point and pull back, yet know that I don't think I'll ever stop, because it's just become a part of who I am. And for me, it's just kind of what makes me tick, especially after so much time.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great to, like you said, your dad, and then now your son's coming into it. So, to be able to have that kind of position, like you said, for him, and be able to help, bring him in and show him the right way to do things versus, the way that, some other people do them. So I think that's great that that he wanted to get in and carry that on.
Yeah, what a great opportunity. And if my other son, who's 23, chooses to get involved, I would love to see that happen. And if he chooses not to, I completely respect that. And, getting back to what I was saying earlier, people come to us to help them. And it doesn't, I've been able to provide opportunity for my family and a future for them by helping other families. And so that's not something I take very lightly. And for my older son to recognize that he has a similar skill set and to pursue it, I think is great. So it'll be a fun transition time as we work through it, and we'll take it from there.
Excellent. And I guess kind of on top of that, what do you feel is the best way that you market yourself as a real estate professional so that you can have continual growth?
Well, remembering that I studied marketing and so on in college, I learned about branding early on. And but I did not really learn how to farm a geographical area until I had been doing this for about probably a little over 10 years. And I met a gentleman who was an amazing farmer one day. We hit it off, and he offered to teach me how to farm a geographical area. And I started in the area that my wife and I had been living in at that time for maybe 4 years or so, and our kids had been born during that time, and it was right before the 1994 earthquake, where we lived at that time, which we don't live too far from there now. There was a lot of damage. Of course, the market was soft. It was a tough time in real estate. But I knew that once I started doing that, because I had instant gratification in the sense that I had instant transactions from it and instant relationships from it, I knew it was something that would work for me. So as the area developed and there were more homes built, my farm area grew. It started with a little less than 300 homes. I went out and I door knocked, and I put American flags in the yards every 4th of July, and we did our mailers, and we did open houses, and then the brand just developed and built itself. And so to this day, I farm a little over 3,000 houses every single month. No, I do not knock on the doors. It's physically impossible to do that. But it provides a regular flow of business. On top of that, I became very involved in our community early on. I had been asked many, many years ago to be on the board of directors for our Boys and Girls Club, which was probably one of the greatest honors I've ever had. And I literally just retired from that board in February after 18 years. But I transitioned to something called the advisory board, so I'm still really involved with the Boys and Girls Club, which has become a big part of our life as in terms of my family. And, I just make sure that advertising is consistent. Again, that speaks to branding. And no, not everybody has a big budget to start. I didn't start with a big budget. In fact, I had a tiny little budget, but I have reinvested money in my business forever. And if there's a rule of thumb that anybody wants to consider, as hard as it is, minimally you got to put 15% of your money back in your business, and you will see it grow. And you can grow it to whatever size you want. And then once you get it to where you want it to be, you just need to maintain it and understand that as the world changes, so do you have to change. And that's basically how that's kind of all happened.
Alex, I think sometimes when it comes to real estate agents that there's sometimes misconceptions or myths that people have or perceptions they have of agents, because sometimes I don't think they really understand the value of everything you do behind the scenes and everything you do to bring a deal together, whether it's for a buyer or a seller. Mm-hmm. What do you think the biggest misconception or myth people have about working with a real estate agent?
That's a great question. I've heard many things. You're overpaid. Why should you have X percent of the value of my home? I'm the one that put blood and sweat into it, and I can hire a company that's an internet company, and I can do my for sale by owner and whatever, and I would never tell anybody not to try to do that if that's truly what they were trying to accomplish. But the reality of it is, although not every realtor is the same, I think you know that, and certainly not every realtor is as knowledgeable as they could be or should be. We all know that. The bottom line is that our world is designed for third parties, specialists to help facilitate those transactions for the protection of the parties involved. And if the consumer really had an understanding of what was done, meaning that the realtor that had that opportunity, whether it was to work with a buyer or a seller, to share their skill set and what their toolbox offers, I think that there would be a little bit better general perception. Unfortunately, there are many realtors that do not return phone calls. They do not return texts. They do not return emails. They're always too busy, whatever. We hear that all the time. And that can sour a lot of people on an agent when, in reality, what is it, the 20/80 rule? It's probably more 15/85 rule. The reason that those people find themselves so busy is because they've developed skill sets that allow them to conduct the business at the highest level and to guide their clients through the potholes that exist. There's no question about it. And, you can talk to a realtor from a different state, from California. California's probably got some of the harshest disclosure laws in the sense that the requirements are so strict as compared to other states. And I've certainly had conversations with realtors in other states, and when they hear what we have to do here, they just can't believe it. And so, the consumers may not always be well educated and understanding. It's possible that they have a preconceived notion because they had a terrible experience with a realtor. That's completely understandable. And so, the bottom line is that I think if the realtor themselves could create the presence necessary to earn the client's trust, that would go a really long way to help dispel that potential misconception.
Absolutely. And Alex, let's say you get a call from a family member or a friend, and they're in another state, and they want to sell their home. Obviously, with your 36 years of experience, you probably have lots of connections and different networks, and you could potentially call in a referral. But from a general advice standpoint, what would you tell them about selecting an agent that could best serve their needs?
Well, I would tell them to interview, depending on what they were looking for. If it was a buyer's agent, they need to develop a relationship with somebody that they believe has their best interests at heart. And that's something that's a very personal thing because, personalities are critical. And if the realtor, wants to just take them and throw them in the back seat of the car and drive around and show them houses without ever spending any time trying to get to know them, to understand what they're trying to accomplish, to confirm financially up or down what the right level for them to be at so that they're not buying under where they should or could be or above where they should or could be, and then guide them in that way. I would tell them to find somebody else. If they're looking to sell a home, they should interview at least 2 people, possibly 3. I belong to a couple of pretty large referral networks, and we refer people all over the country all the time. And when that happens, I ask permission that I get to interview that person prior to them even being given the information to the individual that's asked me for that help, especially since I know them, family or friend. And that way I can maybe help to save them some time, and maybe create a more efficient way for them to go through that interview process. And not unlike me, when I go on listing appointments, I'm typically, competing with 2 or 3 other people, and that's just the nature of the business, because personality is a big part of this, obviously, on top of skill set. But that's really what I would do, and I would be available to answer questions, but not in an interfering manner, because state to state, as I mentioned a little while ago, laws are different. And, sometimes people are afraid to call the, quote, top person in the area, thinking they'll never get a phone call returned or whatever. But typically what you'll find is the people that are the top people have developed systems within their own businesses that allow them to do what they should be doing, which is staying in contact with their clients and handling the situations as required and providing the guidance as needed, which is why they're so busy, because they've figured out how to do it, the right way. So I would say don't ever be afraid of that. And sometimes people want to just deal with their friend down the street. That's okay too, but if they're not highly skilled, I would tend to try to guide them away from something like that.
Excellent. And Alex, obviously you're based out of the Simi Valley, which I guess you would cover Ventura County and San Fernando Valley. If somebody's looking for real estate services or an agent in those general areas, what's the best way they can find out more information about you and how you can help them?
Well, it's easy to find me. If they Google my name, Alex Gandel, they would find me right there. My website's always obviously available, and that's my name, alexgandel.com. They can email me at alex@alexgandel.com. They can call my office at 805-522-6788. I'm available pretty much every day, and we appreciate any business, but, more importantly, if there's somebody that's looking for a real estate agent and they just have some questions, I answer questions all the time. I'm out to earn their business. I don't expect someone to call me and I think automatically they're going to want to do business with me. So I understand the process, and certainly I'm always hoping I can be that one that makes the difference. So, but I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. And if they just would choose to reach out to me, I would appreciate that opportunity.
All right. Well, Alex, we obviously want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come here today and share your professional real estate experience with all of our listeners. And if you're listening and you want to learn more about Alex, obviously you can Google him, like you said, or you can go to his website. Also, below this interview, we'll have a link to his site and any other contact information we have so that you can get in contact with Alex and learn more about him and how he can help you. So with that said, everybody, until our next show, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.